Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I am the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church right here in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith where everyone is welcome. We hope you enjoy our service today. The title of my sermon today is, You Gotta Hear It Inside. I'd like to start this morning with a little lesson. Some of you know that over Thanksgiving, Toby and I took this really amazing trip. We did an Amtrak trip from Chicago all the way to Los Angeles, which was so cool. And it was only 3 days, if you can imagine that. And it's just this wonderful trip where you leave downtown Chicago in the bustle and the energy, and you get on the train, and within an hour or so, you're in the Great Plains. You're looking at the Oregon Trail. You're looking at the Great Plains and the farmlands, and you go to sleep and you wake up at the foothills of the Rockies, and you see the Great Mountains, and you cross those, and all of a sudden you're into the deserts of the Southwest, and you go to sleep and you wake up almost in Southern California. And so I learned so many things on that trip, but one of the most important lessons I learned happened on day 3, We woke up early on that third day. We had just crossed the state line into California and had about 2 hours to go to Los Angeles. And, okay, I was looking a little sketchy. 3 days on a train. It happens. And Toby went to get us some coffee. So I thought, I'm going to fix up a little bit. So I pull up my little makeup bag, and I start getting all fixed up, put my face on, blah, blah, blah. And Toby comes back with the coffee and hands it to me and goes, "What is wrong?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I was just trying to get a little fixed up, a little surprised. And he goes, "You look so angry." And I pulled out a little mirror, and he was right. And here is the lesson, brothers and sisters. Never, ever try to highlight your brows on a moving train. Don't do it. Don't try it. Don't do it. And that is the point of my sermon today. Kind of. It's a little stretch, but it's close. The point being, never judge something simply by what you see on its face. Never judge something by what you hear, only what you hear in the world. It's true for reading emotions based on badly drawn eyebrows. It's true for people. And it's especially true when it comes to matters of the Spirit. Today we heard the story of the call of Samuel, which is such a great story. And there Samuel is a boy, and he's studying with the priest Eli. And one night while Samuel's asleep, God calls his name. And Samuel, thinking it came from out there somewhere, ran to Eli and said, You called me. And Eli said, "I didn't call you. Go back to sleep." So Samuel goes back, and sure enough, God calls Samuel's name a second time. Samuel hears it out there and runs to Eli and again says, "You called." And Eli said, "I didn't call you. Please go lay back down." Finally, God calls a third time. And when Samuel goes to Eli, Eli realizes what's going on. Eli realizes inside that it's God calling Samuel. So Eli said, "Go back and listen. And if he calls you again, say this: 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went back to the room and did as Eli commanded, and he heard the voice of God. I love this story. I mean, who here has not had this experience? We hear what we think is God calling us, but how do you know? How do you know if it's God? Or just something you thought up? Or the chatter of the world? Or indigestion? How do you know? Well, Eli gives us an important lesson on this point, and it's exactly what he told Samuel. When you hear something that you think might be God, stop. Stop and say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Now, okay, I can see already some of y'all are sitting out there thinking, okay, just exactly how is this going to work in real life? Like I'm sitting at my carol at work and I think I hear God speaking, so what? I'm just going to get up in the break room and exclaim to all my friends, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Well, yeah, if you want to, you can. But there are other more subtle ways that you might be able to do this. What Eli is actually telling Samuel to do is stop. Stop and just listen. Don't assume you know what you are hearing out there in the world, because to hear it, you've got to hear it inside. You've got to hear it inside. And that's the hard part. Because to listen to the outside world is easy. It takes no effort whatsoever. But to hear it inside, you have to have concentration. You have to have attention. You have to be centered. You have to be focused. But we have to do it. Otherwise, like Samuel, we may miss the very word of God. When it comes down to it, Eli is teaching Samuel about mindfulness and quiet. And it's a lesson we could all use as well. Now, I know it's easy to talk about meditation and prayer and mindfulness. It's a hot topic. Everybody's writing about it. I mean, the Wall Street Journal had a big spread in it about mindfulness a few months ago. So you know it's mainstream now, right? It's easy to talk about, but it's much harder to actually make ourselves do it. Or is it? This week I was having a phone conversation with a dear friend. His name's Paul Lambert. Some of you may have met him. He attends MABC when he's in town. He lives in California, and he's a Broadway producer, and he loves our church. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Anyway, he was talking about developing a new show, and that in that development process, he was trying to listen to God to make sure he was on the right path. And he said this, and I wrote it down as he was talking because I thought it was great. He said, I think about it like visiting with God. And here's the part I love. He said, every day and every night, we have the opportunity to ring the doorbell of the most powerful force in the universe. I love that image. Every day we have the opportunity to ring the doorbell of the most powerful force in the universe. We can just go and chat with God anytime. So why in the world would we not just sit ourselves down and stay for a while? Well, amen to that. The power and the beauty of life is found inside, in here. It is found when we ring the doorbell of the most powerful force in the universe and say, speak, your servant is listening. I want to offer you two examples of this. The first is about the beauty within. I'm sure you've all heard of the great composer Beethoven. I'm sure you've probably also heard of his piece, the Ninth Symphony. It was based on the poem Ode to Joy, and I'm sure you probably recognize the melody. As a matter, Chris, can oh. Thanks, Chris. You were on that, man. I'm telling you. You'll recognize that, right? I mean, it was heralded as a great work of genius because Beethoven did something that had never been done before. He added voices in the fourth movement. He basically turned a symphony into an opera, and it is considered one of his greatest works. But here's the real kicker. You ready? He wrote this piece later in life when he was deaf. He wrote it when he was deaf. In fact, when the symphony was performed the first time, he conducted it. And at the end, when there was thunderous applause, one of the soloists had to literally turn Beethoven around so he could see that the audience was applauding. You know, this thing could have gone a very different way. Had Beethoven focused on his deafness, if he had only listened to the silence that he heard coming from the world, he might never have composed again. But instead, he focused on the music inside. He listened to the beauty. He listened to the voice of God inside. And he brought forth one of the most beautiful, one of the greatest pieces of music in history. The beauty and power of life is found inside, which brings us to our second example from Dr. Martin Luther King. There's a story about Dr. King from early in his ministry. He was 27 years old and had been leading the Montgomery bus boycott, which had set off a series of death threats against Dr. King and his family. And one night on January 27th, 1956, he was sitting at his kitchen table, his family asleep in the back room, and he got an anonymous phone call that threatened not only him, but his wife and his daughter. Dr. King said this: "I was ready to give up. In this state of exhaustion, when my courage had all but gone, I decided to give the problem to God. With my head in my hands, I bowed over the kitchen table and I prayed aloud these words: I am here taking a stand for what I believe is right, but now I am afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength and courage, they too will falter. I am at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can't face it alone." And in that moment, it seemed as though I could hear inside the quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, "Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth, and God will be at your side forever." Almost at once, my fears began to go. My uncertainty disappeared, and I was ready to face anything. Again, let's be clear, this thing could have gone a very different way. Dr. King could have focused out there on the death threats, on the corrosive racism which surrounded him, and walked away from the cause. But instead, he focused on the voice inside. He listened to the power inside, and he stayed the course, and he changed the world. Brothers and sisters, there is a power inside. There is a beauty inside, and we have to tap it. We have to tap the beauty and power in here to offset the evil and ugliness out there. And believe me, it's out there. Like badly drawn eyebrows, honey, it is out there. We see it every week in the paper, we hear it in the news, we hear it from our own government officials. Racist, sexist, judgmental words that separate, words that isolate, words that try to break us apart. But know this: the voice of truth is not out there. The voice of God is not out there. It is in here. It is inside. It is a voice that calls us together as beloved children of God. It is a voice that offers comfort and mercy and hospitality to the stranger. It is a voice that reminds us of the words in 1 Corinthians 12:26. If one member suffers, we all suffer. If one member is honored, we all rejoice together. Doug Shapiro's solo, he's going to sing in a minute, talks about this in such a beautiful way. The lyrics are go like this: when you speak to me, when I take the time to listen, there is more than what I think I feel. When you speak to me, when I sit and still the motion, there is nothing left but what is real. When you speak to me, when you call me and surround me, there is peace to cover any pain. When you speak to me, When you place your word inside me, I am filled and I am strong once again. Brothers and sisters, there is beauty and there is power in here. Not out there, in here, inside. And all we have to do is ring the doorbell of the most powerful force in the universe and say, speak. Your servant is listening. All we have to do is stop and hear it inside. And the people said, amen.
When you speak to me, when I take the time to listen, there is more than what I think I feel. When you speak to me, when I sit and still the motion, there is nothing left but what is real. There is an answer to every question. The answer is you. And the heavens open when you speak to me, pouring light into my waiting heart. And the music fills an ocean silently, quietly, when you speak to me. When you speak to me, when you call me and surround me, there is peace to cover any pain. When you speak to me, when you place your word inside me, I am filled and I am strong again. There is a reason for every longing. The reason is you. And the heavens open when you speak to me, pouring light into my waiting heart. And the music fills an ocean silently, quietly, when you speak to me. And the heavens open when you speak to me, pouring light into my waiting heart. And the music fills an ocean silently, quietly, when you speak to me. When you speak to me.
Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.
Gospel go unheard.
Always remember that this is a community of faith in which you are always welcome and that you will always be considered family. And until we see you again, may God bless you and keep you. May God bring peace to your life and strength to your soul. And as we leave through those doors, let us not look for answers out there. Let us not look for direction out there. But let us look to our own hearts. Because remember, you got to hear it inside.